Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's Monday the 29th of December 2025 and the time is currently 11:30 a.m. Brisbane time. A bit out of breath, excuse me. I've just cleaned out my worm farm and flushed it out and moved all the lovely fertiliser on top to dry out so I can put it around the garden. And it's a fair bit of work for niggling around, and I actually started by, I sat down to read to you Boadicea about half an hour ago, but I had emptied out Mr. Crow's, well, all the wild birds' little swimming pool, their little bird bath. Oh, darling, why did you eat the lorikeet mix when I gave you seeds? Choking on lorikeet mix. No, that's not for you. Honestly, they prefer it because it's sweet and it tastes of blueberries. Anyway, what was I saying? So I'd emptied out their bath because it needs to be, cleaned should be emptied every day, but I usually do it every second day. But I'd forgotten, and it was a bit manky looking, so I tipped all the water out, scrubbed out the algae, and threw some leftover banana chips that Kermie and little Bo don't seem to like. I don't know why, they're delicious. I ate one of them myself, it was yummy. Anyway, because they've been, in the bird cage for a few days, I decided not to eat it, and I gave it to the crows. Well, gave it to the wild birds. Anyway, so I sat down to read to you Nanda Scott's Boadicea, and I just started to read when Mr. Crow took one of the banana chips, which are very hard and dehydrated and, obviously very dry and crunchy and crispy and delicious, but he'd never encountered one of those before. Oh, this most beautiful butterfly. It just landed. Can you see it? There he goes. It's a triangular shaped wings, but not blue, white. Say hello to the people, Bo and Kermie. I'm putting them together in Bo's cage now, and Kermie seems to quite like it since they're used to each other and they get along fine. I figure they can stay together, and I'm not sure. I could give that cage back to Avril, but it's rusting, so I'm not sure what to do. I'll ask her if she still would want it. But on the other hand, it's good to have the two cages in case those two fight. So I'm just seeing how we go before I decide whether I give it away or not. But anyway, there's Mr. Crow, making a hell of a mess, living his best life being a bird. Right, look at you, little Bo. You talking to the people of Earth. Say hello, people of Earth. Hello, I am the Bo. I am the only one, Kenobi. The best Bo Mama T could ever have. Yes, and Kermie. Kermie's my little Bo too. And Mr. Crow's my little handsome Bo too. Oh, look, the turkey's here. He can have that, that's for him. You watch, he'll still take the lorikeet mix, the little bastards. They really love it. Anyway, where was I? Yes, so I'm sitting down here, beginning to read you the story. Well, my usual preamble that I do. And Mr. Crow takes the very dried, crunchy, crispy banana chip, flushes inside the dried out clamshell. It had no water in it because I emptied it. Dropped the banana chip down and just looked at me. In other words, saying, it's not good enough, Mama T. Number one, I want my bath. And number two, how am I going to soften my food if you don't have any water in this thing? He really looked at me with real, kind of contemptuous, not fury, but disdain. So that's why I'm a bit later than I intended. I scrubbed it out and filled it up with water. And he took the banana chip, he didn't put it in the pond now. So he was really just complaining about the fact that there was no water in it. They love it so much. So he's strutting over there now, he's a happy bird. Are you going to have a swim, Mr. Crow, now that you've got water? Yes, Mama T. He's drinking out of it too. It's all nice fresh water for you boys and girls, my beautiful wild birds. Nothing like fresh water on a stinking hot Brisbane day. It hasn't been too hot today though. It was very cool yesterday. At one point yesterday, I actually got chilled and got cold. Can you believe it? How bizarre is that? After the intense heat wave we've had. So it's been a bit strange, the weather, but today's lovely. The sun's out, but it's it's breezy and it's not too suffocatingly hot, and the birds are happy and I'm happy, and life is pretty bloody good actually, pretty bloody good. Those of you that go on my Instagram or happen to be on my Facebook, I spent yesterday afternoon, along with getting absolute chilled, I was suffering very bad fatigue. So I went and laid down for about an hour. I didn't actually sleep all that much, but I just rested. And then when I got up, it was like somebody had put a rocket under my tuchus, under my ass. And so I got all my equipment out and I pulled out my silky oak tree stump and all the stamping equipment and the hammers and all the paraphernalia I needed. And I got my sterling silver ingots that I'd actually made months ago. They've been lying around for months. And I hammered them, so I hammered 6 little Pegasus. I think I'll make 3 pairs of earrings out of them, although they're good to put on as embellishments, or I could even solder them onto a ring, you know. They're lovely. I really love them. So I made 6 of those out of the smaller ingots, and in the 2 larger ingots I made another hare in the moon and another green man. So that took up from about 2 p.m. I worked until 8 o'clock-ish, 8:30ish on them, because I brought everything inside and I was still working on them. Even though I put the birdies to bed, I just sort of sat quietly trying to, because you got to file all the edges and round them all off, and it's a lot of bloody work. So I still have to file. I only worked on one little Pegasus ingot and the green man, so I've still got to work on all the rest. So that's going to be a few days worth of work, filing them down, making them perfectly rounded and tidied up. So today I thought I'm not going to do anything with the silver. I'm exhausted. But famous last words, I know what I'm like. I'll get a bee in my bonnet like I did yesterday and off I'll go. But you know what? It passes the time. I listen to podcasts on YouTube, all my favourite ufology subjects and paranormal subjects. Listen to the latest drop by Into the Fog, which is usually about ghosts. And that was very interesting. And then I listened to, who did I listen to? The Third Eye guy, what's his name? Michael something. Anyway, it passes the time and I don't feel quite so, lonely or alienated then, because it's human voices coming through the iPhone, and I'm learning, not really learning anything I didn't already know, but, poring over all my favourite subjects. Sometimes I do learn new things, which is lovely. And, you know, hours go by, and at the same time I'm working on my jewellery, so I'm actually doing two things at once, so time gets filled up. And it's probably why today I felt really tired. I woke up at 6:30 and I took my mask off and, you know, got up to pee and had a bit of breakfast and let the birds out of their cage and opened up their room, and then I thought, fuck it, I'm tired, I'm going back to bed. So I went back to bed and I slept until about 10ish, not fully sleeping the whole time, but rested. So I had a good rest today. I feel really good. Baby girls and baby boys, I could take over the world. Be afraid, be very afraid. But not really. I'm pretty harmless, really. Unless someone enrages me beyond belief, and then that's usually for a very good reason. I don't get angry lightly. So anywho, so now I'm sitting out in the garden with my 4th cup of tea today, which is way too much tea, with my beautiful birds, Kermie, Bo. They're preening happily in the sunshine. And there's a subterranean kind of ache missing my daughters and, you know, contact with some of my closer friends, but haven't heard from one I don't expect to hear from because we ended the friendship, but the other one I haven't heard from either, so that's it. That's where we're at, people of Earth. The Mama T and Sacred Space, and her only friends are the wild birds and her 2 pet birds. Oh, and the goldfish, but goldfish are very ambivalent about human beings. They just sort of don't really think all that much of us, really. Just glob, 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 which is pretty accurate character assassination of us, really, as a species. Although my other goldfish, but that's because I interacted with them frequently, they were actually quite tame and would come up and nibble at my fingers, and they were lovely, but they all passed away. So I deliberately haven't got attached to these ones because it's heartbreaking when they die. It's heartbreaking when all my pets die, but with fish you always wonder what it is that you did wrong sometimes. The last one I bet myself up. I thought, oh, was the water not clean enough? Was something not quite right? Nothing was wrong. I realised after grieving for a few days that the bloody fish had died of old age because he was about 10 years old. And then I was like, oh, thank you, Goddess, it wasn't something that I did wrong. Anyway, these fishes are quite young. They're only about 1.5 years old, so, and there's only 2. So they're doing okay. Kermie's like, why are you going on about your goldfish, Mama T? I'm the important one. I'm the important one. Yes, you are, Kermie. Do you want to see what he's doing? He's up on his favourite swing. I moved it into Bo's cage. I thought if they're going to be in together, he might as well have his favourite things. And he's preening. Don't know if you can see. What you doing, Kermie? Happy boys. Happy boys. Right. Let us begin at long last. Chapter. Were we up to chapter 18? Yes, I think we were. Chapter 18 of part 2. The god's island of Mona lay low in the ocean. Pale waves creamed its flanks. and the sea ran thick as liquid iron in the straits that separated it from the mainland. Dawn had not yet come. Grain laid on her belly in the unlight, amidst colourless sea pinks and harsh rimed grasses, looking out to the place where water met land. Beautifully written, I must say. Well done, Amanda Scott, making this very pleasurable for me indeed. The tide was on the ebb. Waves riffled up the shingle a little further away each time. Periodically, she measured the distance from the frothing wavelets to the high tide mark a hand span in front of her face, where the storm of the last 3 days had rammed a broken crescent of bladderwrack and sea-aged oak and clear jellyfish with pale purple stars at their centres. Trying to remember if I've ever seen that. Far above the rest of the shore's detritus. Must be an English thing. Time was measured by waves. In between was timeless and held its own peace. The pungent scent of sea and rotting weed seeped into her skin and hair. It lay ripe on her tongue and swelled the space of her lungs, drawing out forgotten memories of the time before, when she had lived on Mona, when she had been whole and the world had seemed safe, when her mother had been the beloved of Briga, a warrior without match and invincible, when Rome had been a distant, faceless enemy to be defeated by the greater power of the Boadicea and the gods, when the Boadicea's daughter had been the promised of Nemain and had not ached in every part of her body from the assaults of uncounted men. The pain was less than it had been. The sea's healing had worked on the journey over, and that, the freedom and exhilaration of the ocean, had been the first surprise. Until she had boarded the ship sent by Luain MacCalma to fetch her, Grain had not known how much happier she was riding the prow of a bucking vessel than she had ever been or was ever likely to be riding the calmest horse. The journey from the far southwest toe of Britannia to the southwesterly tip of Mona had taken 3 days, the last 2 sailing hard into the teeth of a storm. No stabilisers in those days either. Scary. Every slamming wave had been a challenge as great and as miraculous as the spear trials of her brother and sister. They had made as nothing the bruises and tears of her body, showing how small were the assaults she had suffered when the vast, crushing power of the God was so great. Are you ripping up your swing seagrass, Kermie? Well, I suppose it's made for him to rip up, isn't it? Anyway, he's contented. At first, simply to face that force without terror, to stay still and accept what was thrown at her, had been challenge enough. Later, numbed and cold and exhilarated, she had learned to fight back, shouting and screaming into the power of the sea. I did that once. I invoked all the gods. Necessary. Je ne regrette rien. Sometimes the highest magic is done when you invoke the forces of nature. And there is nothing more healing than the sea. If you're going to scream, scream into a tempest. The howl of the wind will drown out your screams and you'll release all that powerful energy out into the ether. The gods will hear you even if fellow human beings willfully choose to be deaf and dumb to your plight. Amen Vasala. Caught in the need of it, she had spent each moment of daylight and a good half of the torchlit nights on the foredeck of the Cormorant, clinging to the prow rails, howling into the maw of the gale that Manannan had roused to protect the gods' island from Rome, with the sea lashing her face and hands until the skin grew red and peeled from her flesh, and her ox blood hair lost its shine and became brittle and greyed with salt. Matter of fact, Mama should be by the sea right now, boys. Hanging out with you in the sacred space garden is lovely, but there's nothing lovelier than the sea, my boys. Håkan Dubornos had wanted to bring her below deck to safety, but Segoventos, the elderly Gaul who had put his ship to sea on her account at least half a month earlier than anyone else would have dared to, had promised to care for her life with his own. Then Gunnevor had made a harness that tied to the prow rail so that even if she lost her grip, she would not be swept overboard, and the two men had given up their persuadings and only brought her meals and asked her to come below to sleep when the night was darkest. Sounds like she really, really enjoyed being out in the elements. Powerful little girl. I'm impressed. Girl after my own heart. Yes, my boys. On the last night, seeing the storm about to blow itself out, they had not done even that. The wind had been dying as they had put down the small boat and rowed for Mona's shore, so that the white mains cresting the waves had shrunk and shrunk again until they became just more green water slopping lazily up to kiss the rocks of the headland. The disappointment of that was a blessing of sorts. If Granny had come straight from that wild joy to the desolation of the abandoned great house and the hollow emptiness of the evacuated steading, the loss of all that was Mona would have been much harder to bear. As it was, the 500 warriors who had been chosen to remain had made an honour guard for her, and it had been necessary to greet them and to learn their names. 500 names to learn. Oh, well, I'd be fucked, wouldn't I? Crikey. Anyway. When in doubt, just call everyone darling, sweetheart, honey, sugar. Don't usually call people sugar though. If I call them sugar, I'm being a bit sarcastic. But honey I like. My mum used to call everyone darling or honey. Yes, she couldn't remember names either, obviously. It got worse as she got, entered into dementia, but Alzheimer's, but wow. It had been necessary to greet them and to learn their names and to hear their stories. That part I do like, hearing people's stories. And see the place set apart from the rest, where their dream marks had been carved on the roof beams of the great house, so that it was almost dusk before she had time alone to look for Bellos of the corn gold hair and the god-like eyes whose dream had called her back home. Unlike the others, he had neither remarked on her bruising nor pretended not to see it. He had met her in the dream and knew what she was. The relief of his easy presence had held her with him through the remainder of the evening. He had been sitting by the... She had been sitting by the fire with him, sharing malted barley and ewe's milk cream from the first lambings, before she had found that he was blind. She had been lying in the dark, halfway to sleep, before she realised that Valerius must have known of the blindness and had not thought to tell her, but had left her to find out on her own. She had fallen asleep thinking of that and wondering why, and had dreamed of something, but had lost the shape of the dream on waking. The frustration of the loss and the aching emptiness of the once vibrant steading had been enough to rouse her from her bed and send her down the path to the jetty to find a place where she could lie unseen and find out for herself if everything she had been told about the coming invasion was true. It was not yet light enough to see anything. Alone, in a kind of peace, she lay on her belly in the coarse grass, listening to the soft out-breath of the waves and breathing in the ocean's leavings while the dawn leached colour back to the world. You snoozy little Bo. Bo's going to have a little sleepy bites. You're tired. It's hard work being a birdie, isn't it? It's very hard work. You haven't even had to make a nest for your babies. You haven't even got mates. Just two bachelor cocks who've only just befriended each other in recent months. Oh well, they're getting on okay. Although Kermie still dominates the little one and pushes them away from the food when he wants something. It's quite chilling to watch actually. But by and large they're getting on. He hasn't actually done him any damage. He's just bossy. Bossy, 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 bossy. They're such happy birds. They really are. It was not yet light enough to see anything. Alone in a kind of... Oh, no, I've read that. By the gods, Mama T's drifting. Whistle her back home. Shapes grew from the greys. Presently, she was able to see the barnacled wood of the island's jetty, a spear's throw to her right. For a little longer there was only mist and the iron sea beyond it, and she could hold on to the memory of Mona as it had been through all of her childhood. Not at peace, because the warriors who made it home had conducted a war against Rome without cease, and she had never known true peace. But the island had always been a place of sanctuary, secure against any threat. It was secure no longer. The sea became an ocean of muted mirrors, catching the early light and spinning it high again and again to the sky. A pair of oyster catchers sliced across the wave tops towards her and then turned at an angle and fled north to open water, piping alarm. Beyond the line of their flight, it became possible to see that the jetty's opposite partner, which should have reached back to offer a landing place on the mainland, had gone. Where it had been, the rock was scorched black and fragments of charred wood still dabbled in the waves. There was tranquillity of a kind in the burned remains, couched in mist and rock, but straight lines were already taking shape amongst the curving stones. Right angles grew at their ends, and, too fast, the burgeoning light showed the outlines of gunwales and prows of boats, and soon she could see what Bellos had described, that dozens of flat-bottomed barges were strung end to end, bobbing in the quiet water like beads on a string hung for a child to play with. And beyond those, spread thickly along the shore and back into the purpled heather and bracken of the lower slopes, were the tents and pavilions and mules and horses and latrine ditches and quartermasters' piles, set about with chained hounds to keep off rats, of 2 legions of the Roman army and their 4 wings of attendant cavalry. Closer than those, 2 smaller clusters of tents sat about the burned heel of the mainland jetty, with horses in 2 separate corrals and 2 different cavalry banners cracking in the breeze above them. Granny had no need to count them. She had grown in a world where she knew the standards and banners of Rome and the numbers of men they commanded, as well as she knew the dream marks of her own kin. Taken altogether, there gathered on the mainland 8,000 men trained for war. A stretch of water was all that kept them from Mona, and it was not enough. They have their boats ready. Why did they not attack yesterday, when the storm first died? Granny asked it aloud into the silent morning. After a moment, Bellos God-Eyes, whom everyone else knew as Bellos the Blind, said, "Did I make a noise that you knew I was here?" He sounded amused and exasperated, and had not answered her question. "No, the oyster catchers took fright at you and turned away. You might have been Hawk. He can walk as quietly, but your tunic smells of apple wood smoke, and his still smells of the sea." Granny rolled on her side to look back at him over her shoulder. "Does anyone know why the governor hasn't attacked yet? We were lucky, or perhaps we could say that Manannan extended his grace one more day. The west side of the island where you landed yesterday was clear, but here on this side, a sea mist held both sides of the straits all through the day, so that it was impossible to see your hand in front of your face. That might not be a handicap to me, or perhaps to you, but it was enough to halt the legions, for which we may be grateful." Bellos had not mentioned his blindness before. Granny searched for bitterness in his face and found none. But I have a feeling that it's pronounced Grain, but I've been calling her Granny all this time, so I'll stick with it. All the Gaelic speakers they just want to slap me up the side of my head right now. I do apologise for Anglo-Saxonising your language and turning it into something incomprehensible. But we do that, we English speakers. Got a long history of butchering people's languages. and other people and other cultures, and colonising entire world, pretty much the entire world. I do apologise on behalf of my ancestors. It wasn't cricket what they did, but they even brought the game cricket with them and foisted that upon you, although some of you enjoy cricket. I'm beggared to know why, but it is what it is. Kermie's sitting on his perch, chewing on his own beak, which apparently I had to Google it when I first got them. So I don't remember Charlie chewing on her own beak very often. But apparently it's a sign of contentment, people of Earth. You happy boy. He knows I'm talking about him, so he's looking at me. You happy boy chewing your own beak, Kermie? Am I going to get some kisses out of you too? My little lovebirds? 2 roosters? 2 little rooster birdies? 1 Indian ringneck cock and 1 little cockatiel cock. Stop it, Mama T. I can see where you're going with that, Mama T. Don't be mean to me, Mama T. Okay, Bo, I will respect your authority. I always get stuck at the low notes. When I go, I'm going like Elsie. What use is sitting alone in your room? Come to the cabaret. Come to the cabaret, old chum. Come hear the music play. The birds are like, we've got our own songs, Mama T. Way better songs than you. They do indeed. They're more melodious too. We'll leave it to the experts, shall we? Yes, we shall. Right, sometimes Mama T drifts, but it can be a bit entertaining for someone. I don't know who. Perhaps just me. Right. Bellows had not mentioned his blindness before. Grain or Grainy or Grain searched for bitterness in his face and found none. But only a closing of something that had not been truly open, as if he felt her scrutiny and was not yet ready to bear himself to it. She said, would that not have been a good time for them to attack while the mist hid their true numbers from us? They did not need to see much, only enough to know that they were not killing each other. The officers might think so. I suspect the governor will have done, but the men are too afraid of the nightmare beasts and the walking dead that stalk Mona's shores. They won't attack in anything except perfect daylight. She was learning to read him, to hear the faint lilt in his voice that was satisfaction, and the barest shavings of pride, even while he kept them from his face. My wrist is really sore again. I don't know how I injured it, but it's painful. It's funny how it's just suddenly would start hurting like Hades, and usually it hurts in the morning and then dissipates, but it's decided to arc up again. Holy crap, I hope they come and do the grass soon. It's getting bad. Right. Guessing, she asked, are the nightmares of your making? No, but I made them greater than they might have been. He did smile at that cheerfully and came to sit beside her, stretching his bare feet down the stones until his heels met the gelatinous weed. He was slim, almost bony, and more of a youth than he had seemed in the dream, or even at the night fires. Perhaps 3 or 4 years older than Hawke, but no more. His hair was fine as combed wool and a lighter, more brilliant shade of gold than Kunamar's or Sigfa's. His eyes were a startling noon sky blue, and they stared out over the water at nothing. Even so, he had walked alone from the great house to find her and made his way down the beach without any hesitation. She said, "How well do you know the island?" "Well enough to know my way around." "Is that why you haven't left? Because Hibernia would be a new place and it would be hard to come to know it as well as you know here?" It was not a delicate question, but then it was not intended to be. On the day she had discovered how frustrating it was to have others step around her own wounding, Grain had stopped doing so for anyone else. Still, she held her breath, waiting to see if she had overstepped a mark that neither of them could see. Bellis smiled peacefully. Everything about him was peaceful. Reflectively, he said, I lived on Hibernia for 2 years with Valerius after he freed me from slavery in Gaul, so it wouldn't be entirely new, but yes, there's a bit of that. Then again, every sighted warrior would have stayed behind to see to the defence of Mona if they had been allowed to. In the event, only 500 were given leave. The rest were better used elsewhere. Luan MacCalma is elder. He decides who comes and who leaves, and if he is in conference with Nemain and others of the gods as to his decisions. We are not privy to that. He has asked me to stay. If he had asked me to be in Hibernia, I would have taken ship with the others a long time ago, however unwillingly. Did he ask you to call us to Mona? You. I only called you. The rest are here of their own accord and may be sent away for their own safety. Don't tut at me like that. I'm going to answer your question. No, Macalma didn't ask me to call you, but when it had happened, he did not ask me to stop it either. He has no dreaming of you. He has no dreaming? Once Eamid had dreamed of Grain's birth, and Luann Macalma had dreamed a place for her amongst the elders. As close as last night, even in the quiet grief and release of the morning, there had still been hope that Mona might have reawakened the promise of that. The oyster catchers piped a long way off. A seventh wave hushed closer to the tide rack than the rest. The seventh wave is usually the largest. In the cavalry camp on the opposite shore, a lean, bare-chested man with black hair growing thin on his head and thick on his pectorals stooped out of his tent and, yawning, stretched both arms up to greet the grey morning. It was no easier to look at him than at Bellos. Dropping her gaze to the shingle, Grain said, "Perhaps that's because there's nothing any longer to dream. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's because even the gods don't yet know what will become of you, what you may be or may not be." I didn't have any dreams last night that I remember. It's the first time in quite some nights my mind's been very active at night, very active indeed. But I was gifted rest last night, so to the Holy One in all manifestations of holiness, granting me rest and peace. Happens on occasion, not often though. We have it in mind that you are the wild piece on the board of warriors' dance, the one that can move from one end to the other unhindered and unseen, and so win the game. If we are right, then between us we may save Mona. The dawn wind was too cold suddenly, and the sea spray on her face too painful. Grain sat up, hugging her knees. She felt sick. And if you are wrong? Bellos was still peaceful, still smiling, still staring out across the water he could not see towards the growing activity in the Roman camp on the far side of the straits. He pursed his lips, considering. Then we have 2,000 dreamers who can help to cloud their dreaming. If they, too, fail, then of course we'll have to fight them, which is what the 500 warriors are here for. Against 8,000 legionaries and enough barges to circle the whole of Mona? That's madness. Perhaps, but I prefer to think it's practical. We know the island and are not afraid of nightmares. 8,000 frightened men could become lost here very easily. And even before that, boats have to find a place to land and be filled with men prepared to step off them. He answered absently. He was no longer thinking of her. I suspect we shall find out soon, and if I am wrong, You may have time to tell me so. Would you say they are getting ready to march to the barges? He was still staring blindly out across the water. Only that the tilt of his head was different. Grain looked along the line of his no sight and found that the random movements of morning were becoming more ordered and linear in the legionary camp at the foot of the mountains. Even as she opened her mouth to speak, a trumpet brayed the call to muster. The sound drifted patchily across the straits. Balos pursed his lips and blew a small huff through his teeth. Mikama was right then. It will be today. He got to his feet and held out both hands towards her. His blue eyes smiled to somewhere just above her head. If I offer to help you stand up, will you offer to lead me back to the great house? I could find my way alone, but it's far faster with help. And today, I think, we don't have the luxury of time to spend feeling the lie of the birch bark and lichen on stones to find a sense of direction. My sweet little babies. Kermie's perched with one foot tucked up like this, staring at me. Do you like it when Mama T reads the People of Earth stories? Yes. Is it soothing to the birdie boy nerves? Is it comforting? Is it pleasurable? Is it sweet? Yes, Mama T, he says. As at the Roman camp, the 500 warriors and as many dreamers who had slept in and around the great house of Mona were rousing to a slow grey dawn that might be their last. New fires scattered at intervals across the clearing flickered pale flame and blue smoke against the backdrop of new-leaved oaks. Half-dressed men and women were washing or using the middens, or standing quiet-eyed, speaking to the gods of their dreams. At the fringes, ewes were being milked, and hens tracked down to their night roosts to find the eggs, and corn was being ground and baked into bannocks for the morning meal. Near the stream, a mare newly in season was being held to be served by Hawkes's horse, a flashy blue roan with a white forehead, which had been the gift of a cavalry commander. The horse was Thessalian and bred for chariot racing until it fought too much in the stables and was sent off to be trained for war. At loading time on Sigoventos's ship, they had thought it was too hot-blooded to stand a voyage without destroying itself, the ship, and everyone on board. and would have to be left behind. In the event, it had taken to the sea crossing without demur, and it had been Guinevere's solid black wagon horse that had panicked on the gangway, so that a man had to be with it for most of the voyage to keep it from kicking, the ship apart. Guinevere was there now, making sure the mare did not damage the horse while he served her, or the other way around. Granny sat a little away, leaning against the stone hut that had been Eamid's before she followed Briarca east, and was now, apparently, Bellis's. Guinevere had spent the night inside. The flavours of her wound's ease and fescue and meadow garlic still hung around, as they did any place where the scarred Dulnonai dreamer had woken and made herself the infusions that helped her to manage the morning. The horse served the mare boldly, as horses were meant to do. It augured well for a strong, fast, sharp-minded foal, and Hawke, it could be seen, put a great deal of effort into not looking too pleased so that nobody might think he saw his horse as himself and the mare as his lover. Granny made herself watch and let the nausea rise, and was not sick, which was an achievement in its own right, and more so because no one was watching, and she did it for herself alone. She fixed her gaze on a certain branch in the woods beyond and breathed in deeply and did not move when a shadow slid over her, blocking out the faint warmth of the sun. "Did you go down to the jetty at dawn?" Guinevere stepped back 3 more paces and sat down at his side. Grain said, "How did you know? Did you dream it?" "No. I saw Bellis go out and asked him where he was going. He hadn't dreamed you either. He just has better hearing than anyone else. Losing one sense brings up the others. It's why they used the blind. It's why they used to blind the best dreamers in the old days." Guinevere grinned lopsidedly, as she always did, because the morning was what it was. Granny took note of the scarring in the other woman's face and on her hands, of the rolling, uncomfortable way she walked, and realised how long it had been since she had last noticed any of these. Guinevere was not beautiful, and had not been before the Roman inquisitors had broken her. She was too big-boned and thick-set for beauty, but she carried herself with a dignity and self-possession and humour that stepped over such things, so that it was not only possible to see beyond the damage, but essential. Grain said, "The mist is clearing and the legions are getting ready to launch their boats. The cavalry are there. Before I left, Valerius said that if he were in command, he'd make the cavalry swim across first to take and hold a beachhead so the barges could land safely, but that the governor doesn't know how to order his cavalry and would probably set them to swim alongside the barges. Did you bring any scald root with you from the east? Yes. Why? I have an idea. Sulla, the ferrywoman, used to say that the currents of the straits were her friends, and she could swim across from one side to the other and back without dying. We'd have to work quickly before the mist is fully gone, or Sulla will be seen. But if we can do that, there is a thing that can be done that might help us. It was a morning to savour the small pleasures, the surprise on Guinevere's face, and the flash of uninhibited joy that lit her eyes as she understood what was proposed, so that it was possible to see she had been handsome once. And then the swiftness with which she moved and brought her herb sack from the hut and set about doing what was needed, while Granny went to find Sulla and see if it was still possible for a ferrywoman to swim the straits. Oh, I've got a ringing in my left ear all of a sudden. It's not a very high pitch, but it's weird. It was indeed possible, and Sulla took the idea and made it better, and Dubornos set himself to help her into the straits and out again, which made him less likely to fret over Granny, and so for a moment, on the brink of war, the island was at peace. There was long enough just to savour it before a bull's horn sounded a long, low, looping note that rattled the ribs and shook the air from the chests of all within its reach, signalling the elders' call to meeting. Across the clearing, the dreamers left their morning's preparations and began to file in pairs and silent handfuls into the great house where Luan McCalma waited to discuss with them the dreaming of the night and all previous nights. Oh, did you fall down, little boy? How did that happen? My goodness. Sorry, I got confused there. Didn't see how he fell. Mama's pretty boys. Handsome boys. All right. So I got lost where I was up to then. Across the clearing, the dreamers left their morning's preparations and began to file in pairs and silent handfuls into the great house where Luan McCalma waited to discuss with them the dreaming of the night and all previous nights, and how they might make use of whatever they learned in defence of their island and everything it stood for. By the river where the scald root had been boiled, Guinevere stopped scouring out her cooking pot and straightened, frowning. Do you want to come? Whatever else has happened, You're still a dreamer by birth and right. You'd be made more than welcome. Granny was calf deep in the stream, washing herself clean of the things she had made. Brown water coursed in furrows around her, turbid with peat. Vaguely she could see pebbles and sand and the pale shapes of her feet. The right one was still purple-black from arch to ankle, where she had tried to kick a man, and he had grabbed her foot and crushed it in his hand, forcing it outwards. She looked at the bruising and made herself speak and not feel. I haven't dreamed of anything since we came here. This morning, perhaps, but I don't remember it. She did not say. Bellos and Luane McCalma think I am the wild piece on the gaming board, and that's more frightening than having lost the dreaming, because I have no idea what to do, or when, or even if I can do it, if all the rest becomes clear. Guinevere laid her pot upside down on the damp grass. Straightening with some effort, she said boldly, Bellos may be wrong, and McCalma, it is not unknown. Kermie, if you're going to be mean to the bow, you'll have to go in your own cage. Yes? I'm watching you, Kermie. Are you bored? Go and play with your toys. Stop annoying the bow. Her face was quite neutral, offering neither challenge nor support. Good boy, Kermie. It's good when you listen to the mama tea. You're a good boy, really. Just every now and then he gets an attack of the wild. We all do, don't we? Don't repress yourself, express yourself. But I don't, we don't want him to encourage him to bully the little boy. It's his cage he's in, not the other way around. By the gods. We've got on all morning and now he's getting fractures. I'm watching you. I am. I'm watching you be your best birdie self. Go and play with your toys. Go on. Get out your aggression that way. He's eating dried pawpaw now. Right. Granny stood very still in the water. Her legs were cold. She noticed that, as if they were part of something else that should be cared for, if she could muster the interest. For most of her young life, she had been part of the world where a thought might be lifted from the air if it was strong enough. She had never understood why everyone could not do it, and some were afraid when it happened. Now she understood both of these, and that this, too, was lost to her. Something hard lodged in her throat and would not be swallowed away. She said, "Do you dream me as the wild piece on the board?" The old woman's face was soft with care. No, I dream you as a child who was wounded and may yet be healed. Mona has great healing, more than you have yet met. The heart of that is the great house, and if we fail in our defences, the great house may not be standing after today. Will you not come with me and be present in the company of dreamers one last time? She went, because she could think of no reason not to. The cauldron lay upturned on the river bank, with the remains of the scald root beside it, and the cooling embers of a wormwood fire. Wormwood causes hallucinations, people of Earth. Can be toxic in too high amounts too. One of my former friend's daughter, who had bipolar, was drinking wormwood tea and had a complete fucking psychotic break. I said, what did you do that for? Oh, I wanted to dream. I said, dream naturally or not at all. Fucking idiot. People are so idiotic. Needing drugs to do what the gods gift naturally. Blast out what's left of their neurons and become utterly soulless and evacuated out of their own body, mind and spirits. Sometimes permanently, by the way. Morons. Absolute morons. But my psychedelic dreaming was gifted from too many near deaths as a child, so I guess it has the same effect as taking copious drugs, blowing out that part of your brain that is rational and cogent and coherent. Maybe that's why people do drugs, because they kind of want to die or experience death up close and personal. And when they do, some of them don't come back from it, people of Earth. There's a price to be paid for everything, including your co-creationship with the gods. The price I've paid is having a loving man be a true partner to me and be good and kind and honouring and noble and decent and respectful. And yes, I'm angry about it to this very day. The price, the too high price that the gods made me pay for sometimes quite paltry gifts, by the way. Fuck! Well, with no fucking. There'll be no fucking. I won't allow myself to be used and abused in any way, form or manner. Ever again. It's been enough. Sometimes you've got to draw the line in the sand and exercise the power of the fuck off button. Men who thought it was entertaining to play me for some kind of fucking fool and flirt and frotter and tease, and then didn't take very long. Try and fucking control me, my mosh, my freedom, even try and steal joy out from under me. Fuck off, worthless bloody cunts. Mama T has spoken. But I might choose to forgive them one day, because they're drug-addled and, you know, soft-seeded their own souls to the COVIDian madness, drug-addled and DNA corrupted and harbouring something dark because they chose it quite willingly. In fact, tried to enforce it on everyone around them, including me. Mama T wasn't stupid enough to fall for that. Can you believe a homeopath was shilling that shit? A homeopath, utterly destructive and stupid beyond belief. Well, they didn't know I had a dead homeopath spirit talking me through all that paradigm, saying, don't do it, psychedelic dreamer. Don't do it. You've been altered enough by that last vaccine. This one will be the kill switch for you. And he was right too. My former enemy in life came to protect me after his death. It's a bit fucking weird. My protectors were often very, very dangerous, ruthless, murderous men when they were alive. Sir James Douglas, aka named Black Douglas by the English, and that worthless, bloodless satyr David Davidson. Motherfucker. But he reminded me constantly, remember how you barely subsisted for 15 years on psych meds and how they did you no good at all? Big Pharma wants you all munted and blunted and emotionally stunted and then ultimately shunted. Don't play their game. Die as a pristine human. Live as a pristine human. Suffer no fools. Take no prisoners. Waste your heart and your loins on no weak, complicit men. I'm glad I obeyed. It was tempting at times too. Mama T's a real woman and is passionate and gets lonely sometimes. Oh, the temptation. But something was always saying, the only way to win a game is not to play. Stand on your dignity, psychedelic dreamer. Keep yourself safe and be queen of your own destiny. Corazon, as the Spanish like to say. Heart, courage, honour before all the gods and all mortal men. Fuck with me at your own demise, because I no longer care about you, fellow humans. You've taken too much from me. Safety, prosperity, health, my adult daughters, any potential progeny of grandchildren, lovers, homes, money. But you couldn't take God and all manifestations of holiness from me. And that ultimately was my saving grace. So go along, run along, little boys. Hail Satan. Hail whatever God you think will save you. It's all a cosmic joke and a cosmic yoke. The dark side of the Force. I don't fear that either. I've fought both back since early childhood. I've proven my mettle as a woman, a spirit and a shaman. Only I didn't know I was proving it at the time. And the suffering has been immense. And still, the dark side of the Force keeps me here, sitting in my garden with my angels and my fairies and my beautiful little boy birds. When they took Charlie, they took too much. There'll never be another Charlie. And they took Beauregard and they took the cats and the goldfishes. But they kept me here, alive. And I'm getting stronger day by day by day. Today is a good day. And tomorrow, every day above ground is a good day, full of magic and awe and potentialities. Nothing to fear but fear itself. Nothing to lose. Most things can be replaced, except for real heartfelt love. When that's been desecrated, stolen, slandered and besmirched. There's no coming back from that, people of Earth. No coming back from that. Pretty boys. Can you hear the birdies? What birdies are they singing? Can you hear that, Bo? I think that's the butcher bird. Is it? Not sure. A butcher bird who's crippled and can only stand on one foot. I don't know how that happened. He used to have 2 working feet. Something must have attacked him. What do the birdies have to say, Kermie and Bo? They say, "You're all right, Mama T. We love you, even if no other mortal being does." And that's good enough for me, people of Earth. Good enough for me. What do you see? Belus, God Eyes asked it, who was blind and so perhaps had good reason. He set his question quietly, not to interrupt the elder Luanne McCalma, who was speaking. Granny answered the same. I see a fire badly built of hawthorn and pine, with damp wood and too much smoke, so that it has almost no heart. The fire trench took half the width of the great house. They were at the northern end of it, near the folded black mare's skin, where sat Luann McCalma. The elder had nodded to her as she came in, but there was no greater acknowledgement. Mona's end was too near to speak to children, however wild their dreaming might be. But there is some light, Bellos asked. I can feel the heat. A little. It's red at the heart, yellow almost to white at the place where flames grow out of the wood. People? What do you see of the people? As much as the dark will let me. I see faces that I half remember. I could name some of them perhaps, if it mattered to you. He was leading her somewhere and Granny had resented it. Gunnevar was gone, called early into the press of the dreamers by one of the half-remembered names. Bellos rested his elbow on his knee and tilted his face towards her. The striking blue eyes were almost white in the poor firelight, like ice lit from behind by the sun. They carved their own path into her, which had nothing to do with ordinary seeing. He said, "Sit with the flames then, and make them what you want. There will be time enough for that before the talking is done." He was treating her like a child, which was unfair, and it was impossible to make what she wanted. A place full of mystery and dreaming, and the answer to the end of Rome. Instead, it was full only of weary, frightened dreamers, sweating in the dank dark, with the fire built badly and smoking, and the horse hides on which she sat, stiff with age and brine. More than that, she wanted power and ideas from McCalma, strategies that would defeat the thousands sent against them. Instead, she sat in the treacherous dark and heard him name exactly the disaster that faced them, and name after it his lack of any answers. He invited the dreamers to share whatever the gods had given overnight, and they did so, wordily, lacking the precision and drive of other mornings and other sharings. So that time passed, and nothing of value was happening except that Sulla had swum to the mainland and back, and Dubornos, who had gone to help her, slipped into the great house and nodded to Granny to signal some measure of success. 6 dreamers had spoken by then, men and women made hoarse and uncertain by the proximity of danger. Their voices had been dull and lifeless, so that simply to stay awake while they spoke was a challenge. 6 more spoke after them as dully and to no more benefit, and others. Frustrated beyond all telling, Granny stared into the fire and wished she had stayed outside with Hawk, who had ideas that made sense and were not based on the shadow of a buzzard seen on water in a dream, or the flight of a spear that took 3 days to land and killed the Roman governor each day, resurrecting him overnight, the better to kill him again on the morrow. 'Twas not for Bellos, but for herself that she built the shapes in the fire. Hawk was first and easiest. 'Twasn't hard to take the flames and weave him into his form. She carved out the sharpness of his eyes and the way he rode and laughed or was serious, according to her mood. She had not noticed until then how closely he mirrored her, giving whatever she needed. She sent his image out to do battle against the legions on the foreshore, and he went willingly, leaping over rocks like a deer with his black hair flying behind him, and the lizard marks of his clan alive on his arms. Hawk alone was not enough. Granny wished Valerius were there, however ambivalent she felt about him personally. There was no denying his strengths in fighting Rome. He would never have allowed the elders' prevarication. Her mother, too, would have insisted on action rather than words. With flames encompassing all of her vision, I'm smiling because I feel presences here. Someone's coming, they tell me. I just shrug because I've heard from no one, and who gives a fuck anyway? They want me alone and isolated, not realising that is my superpower, how I function the very best, not being bothered by other mortals' ignorance and vapidity and superficiality and greed and corruption and poison. He's coming, they yell again. Who is he? Who is he? Who is anyone really? Spirits having human experiences. Grain wished Valerius were there, however ambivalent she felt about him personally. There was no denying his strengths in fighting Rome. He would never have allowed the elders' prevarication. Oh yes, I read that already, didn't I? Dear Goddess. Getting tired, people of Earth. Her mother too would have insisted on action rather than words. With flames encompassing all of her vision, Granny thought of black hair and copper, of black eyes and green, of the flash of a dry, ironic smile, which could have come equally from one or the other, of the easiness with weapons and horses that should have been her birthright, and so clearly was not. She envied that. In the fire she could admit it and become what she sought. The fire showed her patterns of the warrior she could be, fighting as Kunamar did, or better, Sigva, because even now Kunamar was still too taken with proving himself, and Sigva was long past that, if she had ever known it. In her mind, and so in the flames, Sigva came back to Mona and waited on the foreshore while the Roman cavalry swam their horses across the straits. She sat tall on the white-legged colt, who had the mettle of his grandsire. Valerius joined her on the crow horse itself, and then Briaca mounted on the bay that had been Sigfr's gift. The enemy mounts neared the land. Their manes were white as the crests of Manannan's horses, which were built of water and waves. They were heading towards the place where Grain had watched the dawn rise. She had been there for a reason, and had not known it then. In the fire fancy it made sense. She had made her peace with the god in 3 days of a storm, and again in the quiet of a turning tide. The vast bulk of the water knew her as well as she knew it. Taking a quiet breath, she sent herself into it, spreading out and out until she had no margins, until all of her was the ocean. She felt the lap and rise of the waves and the slower rhythm of the tide. Within it she felt the enemy horses like hornets attacking her skin. She could feel a panic in them that was her doing, and was sorry, except that it meant they were more likely to flounder in the sea, which was good. She did not feel sorry for the men at all. They were jagged iron with souls that harboured desecration of all that she cherished. Did not feel good to have them there. They were scratching at the place where the tide turned, where the great mass of water that was her soul came to rest, and then, answering Nemain's call, turned about and began to move the other way. There was a fold in it that she knew, that she had known for all eternity, a way of creasing the waves, one on the other, at the turning of the tide, that would do for the men on horseback, which they wanted to do for her. Smiling now, Granny turned herself over in the ocean and felt the fold of the sea crease over, and saw the horses flounder and pull away, and saw men in armour unable to keep afloat without the support of their mounts tumble and sink and spin and become still on the sand that was her resting place and theirs. They were not all dead. Perhaps 100 still lived, of the 1,000 who had set out to swim the straits. Such things can happen in a child's imaginings. These few surged out of the water onto the foreshore near where Granny lay. She pulled her soul from the sea and fitted back in her body like an arm in a sleeve. She lay flat in the shingle and used the blade of her skinning knife to catch the sun and make flash signals as Ardakos had taught her. Spears of light went out to dazzle the men so that, fresh from near death in the sea, they came to a land of fire and smoke. The fog smoke wreathing about them was hers. At some other time, she had placed pots of fire and plants around the headland, full of ash and wood and the poor damp fire of the great house, and other things she knew of. The smoke of plants that Eamund had taught her about, and Theophilus, the Greek physician, who had spent a winter in her company. The story of the scald root was his, and of the other plants which, when burned, would confuse men and horses. All these Granny had carried in pots from the great house, because in the dream she was a warrior, the same as her mother, all Valerius, but different. The smoke they made was thick and vaporous, and stole the minds of those who did not know how to protect against it. Even Granny, who had made it, felt that the roof of her mouth was rising to break through the top of her skull. Sort of how you feel when you drink kava, people of earth. Your whole tongue feels swollen and your mouth feels thick and wooden, and the roof of your mouth does feel like it's going to dry through your skull. Awful stuff. I don't know why they drink it in the islands. Must get something out of that experience. It's very calming, I'll give it that much, but I don't want to feel like my whole mouth is turned to clay to feel calm, people of earth. There's nicer ways of feeling calm. Well, it loosened her mind, making it easier to push the path of her thoughts out from her body into the land and the sea and the smoke. Ow! Look, ants. Don't bite me, you nasty little creatures. Must be going to rain. They're getting all restless, but there's no sign of rain in any direction. The ants are attacking people of earth. She remembered Valerius' stories of what it took out of the men to swim in full armour and how hard it was for them to fight on the other side. Into the smoke she wove the certainty that the swim had been the ultimate exertion, and the men who reached land were too cold and tired to fight. They came out of the water slowly, dazzled and befuddled. Led by Valerius, the 500 warriors of Mona met them and slew them where they stood, except for Corvus, who was a friend to them all and did not need to die. Granny asked the gods for his life, but did not know if they heard her. There was respite then for a while, before more of the living came. In time, they paddled in a wide wave across the water, hundreds of barges packed with men, each one. Sorry, I lost it. Each one tight with fear and a resolution, not fully understanding what had happened on the island. Granny whistled. Her mother was no longer there, but Valerius and Sigfa rode like the gods' hunt to the water's edge. Their horses were vast, with tags of lightning at their poles and crests and thunder rolling from their feet. They were 3 against 300 vessels and 8,000 men. But the fire was on their side, and the smoke, and the 3,000 dreamers within it, who were well versed in the dream fears of the men that Belus had fostered. They wove a web between them of smoke and sea fog and fear, and cast it like a net into the water, ensnaring the legionaries before ever they left their barges. The 500 warriors were ready to step into the spaces between and kill men as they stumbled ashore, but they were barely needed. The dream web confused the landing men and set them one against the other, so that whole cohorts turned face on and set about each other with the ferocity of fear and fury. Behind them, the 500 warriors of Mona waited to take on those left alive. Granny, only true blood daughter to the Boadicea, raised a hand and brought it down again as she had seen her mother do, setting it all into action. Somewhere in the background, a low, monotonous voice was still speaking. The contrast with the brilliant colour and action of the fire dream was laughable. Granny, Granny, Granny. Her name came to her from a long way distant, from outside the great house, perhaps, or even beyond the island. Cool fingers touched her wrist. Blue eyes, the colour of the noon sky, came into the line of her sight, and Belus's hair, framing them, was the dazzle of sheet lightning. Granny, it is enough for now. You can stop. Stop. It is enough. Her throat hurt. She was croaking like a gannet. Mid-word she stopped, and there was silence. They were silent, all the talking, droning dreamers, watching her and listening as they had been, it seemed, for a long time. Luann McCalma was at her side, white with a strain she did not fully understand, as if he had been holding the entire net of the fire story and all the 3,000 dreamers within it, and the effort had cost him dearly. He said, "I'm sorry. We had no way to ask it of you, only to hope it might happen. Belus is right. It is enough, more than enough. All we need now is to put what you have shown us into action as best we can. What was not clear is what plants you would use in the smoke to befuddle the horses and the riders, and how to know Corvus, that we may do what we can to spare him. If you can tell us those things, you can sleep, or you can go back to Hawk, who is angry with us for using you and may have good reason. The granny stared at him, unable to speak. She felt hungry, ravenously, achingly hungry, and tired. And under those, as the meaning of what he said became apparent, she felt a blind, screaming panic that cut holes in her heart and threatened to choke her. Someone passed her a water skin and she drank dribbling gouts of it down the front of her tunic. Still croaking, she said, "It wasn't a dreaming. I have had those, and this was not that, only an imagining that anyone could have done. Anyone who is the daughter of the Boadicea, whose uncle is Valerius, who shares blood with Sigfa, who can build her fancies in a fire made of yarrow and oak when the rest of us are choking so we can barely speak and the tears are streaming from our eyes. We have few enough of those on Mona." Luane McCalma was smiling sadly. "I'm sorry. We should not have used you like that. But so much has already been sacrificed for this, and now is not a time to set care of a child above the welfare of Mona. You're right. It wasn't a dream. This is not your healing, nor even the beginning of it, but you have given us what we need. Can we be grateful for that now and do with it what we may? If you are angry, which you have every right to be, you can tell me of it later, and I will make what amends I can. For now, we have an island in peril and must do what we can to protect it." And thus concludes chapter 18 of Amanda Scott's Boadicea, Dreaming the Serpent Spear. You can go now, spirits. I've finished reading the story. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention. Thank you for your attention. Don't know what they were hanging around for, but they seem to enjoy it. The birdies seem to enjoy it, and I seem to enjoy it when I'm not wandering in my own mind, getting worn out and tired. Blessed be. Have a beautiful afternoon wherever you are in the space-time continuum. Here it's afternoon, I think. What is the time now? 1:30 p.m. I've got silver to file down and shape and turn into earrings, so that will involve some soldering. Don't think I have enough. Oh, you know, I do. I should have enough wire. I bought some round wire. So, I can make the posts, but I don't have the butterflies to put on the back. Probably have to buy those. I'm thinking, probably. You can make them. I'd have to I'd have to look on YouTube how to make them. But you probably have to have a certain thickness of sterling silver sheet and cut the shape and roll the butterfly. I don't think it would be 1 millimetre. It'd probably be slightly thinner, but then has to still be sturdy enough to hold the back of the butterfly. I'll probably buy those though. I can buy those. Anyway, blessed be from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. I've got things to do, and it's peaceful in the garden, and I'm glad it's a lovely sunny day because it was really grey and horrible for the last few days. However, the upside of that was it was cooler. So now the sun's out, it's going to start heating everything up again, which will be laborious. Just have to take life one day at a time, don't we, people of Earth? One day at a time, sweet Moses. Anyway, blessed be from Titania's Realm. Have a beautiful day. Sei gesund. Stay well and happy.